All right, today's Lunch and Learn, we're going to talk a little bit about what is a record. And we're not talking about those large vinyl discs that we used to listen to on record players, but we're talking about our district records. So let me share my screen so we can get the slides going. Okay, so what is a record and what are our responsibilities as district employees? I am Amanda Jones. I am our manager and archivist for the records department. Nice to have you all here with me today. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let's see. So basically, let's go ahead and just kind of start from the beginning. So what is considered a record? Records are information that we create on a daily basis that document the activities and transactions of our organization here at the district. These can include anything from written documents that we might create, photos, emails, the district applications that we work in, such as PeopleSoft and Google Drive. All of these things that we're using on a daily basis, I can all be considered records because they are documenting the activities of what we're doing here for the district on a daily basis. So why is it that we should care about what we're doing with our records? Well, simply put, it's our legal responsibility to make sure that we are doing what we're required to do with the records that we're creating on a daily basis. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about public records, since most of us here are working in the PC and not out at the schools. So mainly, we as our district employees, we're working with things that are not necessarily things like student records or HR records specifically. But the majority of what we do is going to be considered a public record. So because PPS is a public-facing agency, the majority of what we do on a daily basis can be considered a public record and can be requested as such. So we do quite often get public records requests for information. It's kind of all over the place as far as what people will request. But having said that, we have to ensure that this information is not only stored properly, but also that it's available should it ever be requested by someone of the public. And something that you may not understand or may not think about on a daily basis is things like our emails, anything that we save to our Google Drives, our chat messages, building and facility information, that is all considered a public record. And at any point, someone from the public, even us as district employees, we can put in a public records request to our public records officer that's within communications. And then typically that public records officer will take that request and then contact whatever department may have those active records and determine whether or not it's something that we can accommodate as far as what we're allowed to do with our public records policies and the public records laws. So things like strictly personal information, we do not release as public records, things like PII. So at least you understand and can feel a little bit confident that we're not going to be releasing sensitive information about you. And occasionally when we do have to release public records, depending on what that record is and what is being requested, there's often instances where we have to redact information so that we are not sharing sensitive things with outsiders, and that we keep your personal information as secure as possible. If you do ever have a question about what or the public records process, you're welcome to reach out to our public records officer, who is Ryan Vandehe in our communications department. He is a wealth of knowledge of what we have to deal with as far as our public records responsibilities. So when we talk about records, and it doesn't matter whether or not it's a public record, a student record, a personnel record, all records have retention rates, unless it's something like a diploma, which is a ceremonial document that does not have retention, but most everything else does. So retention is quite simply just our legal time frame for how long we are required to hold a document or a set of documents. These retention rates can vary anywhere from a year to 75 years. We do also have some information that is on permanent retention, like our board information. All of that is permanent retention. We do have our original board minutes that go all the way back to the very first board meeting. Those are also public records. If you're ever interested to see in something that the board has done 100 years ago, we can pull that up for you. Along with the retention, because it's our legal requirement to retain documents, it's also incredibly important that we are saving this information properly so that it is available to the public should it ever be requested. And because a lot of this information that we are generating on a daily basis is considered public record, it's a really great idea for all of us to remain mindful of what information we are creating, how it's being shared, how it's being stored. You don't want to put something in a Google file that, say, like your personal Google file, that you might not be able to find later because you didn't label it properly or something to that effect. Another thing to keep in mind with records is, and especially retention, is that even though we have legal timeframes for retention, that just means that we are legally bound to hold something for that time period. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can't extend those retention periods based on whether or not there's a legitimate business need to do so. However, we strongly suggest that we do not hold documents past their retention just based on the security risk that it could potentially pose to the district. Anytime we have documents that are retained, even if they are past the legal retention period, if we still have it, it is still something that we would be required to produce if it should be requested. So keep that in mind also when you are typing out those emails, typing those those chat messages to colleagues. Just keep in mind, absolutely keep everything professional, and just so that nothing ends up biting you or the district or your department in the rear end down the line. So what are our responsibilities as district employees? So I kind of covered a little bit as far as, we're generating documents every day. We need to be mindful of what we're putting in those documents. We need to be mindful of where we're saving that information. So this just kind of goes along with that. We just need to make sure that anything that is requested that is a public record is available. So again, this kind of talks a little bit about whether or not occasionally we have staffing changes. So if someone were to leave the district, it's best practice to save things to a department Google Drive or a team Google Drive, something to that effect, so that your colleagues can continue that work if you were to leave the district for any particular reason. So essentially what we're doing on a daily basis is not owned by us, but it's owned by the district. So we need to make sure that we are remaining in compliance with all of our appropriate state laws, with regards to retention and with regards to being able to produce information whenever it's requested. So we in the Records Management Department are always happy to help and answer any questions that you may have as far as what's your responsibility to keeping documents, how to share it properly, and typically just generally what to do with our district records. So records management and the archives. Well, what is an archive? That's a silly question, right? But it's often asked. So a lot of people just think, I'm not really sure what an archive is. Maybe you're thinking of Indiana Jones when they put the Ark of the Covenant into that giant room. That would be kind of considered an archive. We have a little bit different of an archive here in PPS. But essentially, all it is just a repository for where we hold historical records, material, photographs, things like that. We do have photographs, trophies, yearbooks, all kinds of really neat stuff in our district archive. If you're ever interested in reaching out to see some of the incredible things that we have. We do preserve the archive, which just simply means that we ensure that these items are kept safe for historical value. Some of this stuff that we have in our archive can be considered the public records. Like I say, we still have all of our board meeting minutes transcribed back to the very first board meeting in the late 1800s. Most of those older ones are in leather-bound books. But now we do have more digital systems, so the board meeting minutes are now being recorded digitally. Still a public record. So that kind of goes back to our original slide of what can be considered a record, and pretty much anything in any type of format. So emails along with paper records. It really doesn't matter what type of format it's in. As long as it is documenting what we do here in the district, it's a record. A lot of other things that we do here in records management would be things like we handled the transfer of the student records in and out of the district. We help parents who are trying to access their current or past students' records. Graduates that have already left the district or trying to get into college, we help them with their transcripts. Or students who are trying to get a job out in the working field, we do graduation verifications. So if you're ever talking to somebody out in the district and they're unsure as far as what to do or who to contact for the different types of records that we have, they can always start with us. Best place to start is to just come to us, ask, what do I do? And then we can give guidance as far as who you need to contact or what request form you need to fill out, legal rights to the records, things of that nature. Most of our district applications are now digital, thankfully, so we're trying to work on reducing the amount of paper that we're generating in the district. But occasionally we do find that departments still may have some paper records that are not needed on a regular basis, but they may still be under a legal retention frame. So if that's the case and you need somewhere to store these records, you are welcome to contact us in the records management department. We will archive your paper records for you and then keep an eye on the retention rates to make sure that we are well within our compliance for the records laws, retention laws. We have quite a bit of information stored both here in the records department as well as out into our warehouse. So we do have space we can accommodate. We're just trying to stress to everyone that we really should be keeping most of our information within digital format. Just because obviously we're going to have space issues coming up here pretty soon, talking about possible building moves and how do we move this information with us. So let's all try to do our part and keep things in more of a digital atmosphere. Oh my gosh, I did not make enough to stretch this time out. Good golly. I apologize that was very short of a meeting. But does anyone have any questions so far? I can continue talking a little bit more about the different slides, but does anyone have any questions at this point? Yeah, Sharon.
What's the most typical request that you see from the public?
That's a great question. So, we get all sorts of requests from the public. The main ones that we get here in records management would be a lot of times community members are doing genealogy on their families and they want to know whether or not great granddad Bob graduated high school and maybe what year. So, we can help out with those types of things. Um, we also get questions like, what schools were in the district in this particular year, or what schools were active in this particular section of the district at this particular time. A lot of times when people are having um, building celebrations, such as, we've been a school for 50 plus years or whatever their anniversary might be, they will often reach out to us and ask, do you have any information on the history of our school itself? Which absolutely we do. Um, Basically, things like that. A lot of times we will have to reach out to our friends in the facilities department because sometimes people want to know what types of permits were done on particular sites, what changes have been made, things of that nature. So it really kind of depends on whatever the person is researching. We also get a lot of questions as far as famous alumni for the district. We just had a gentleman reach out recently asking for information on Sidney Porter. So he's doing a little book in regards to that. Sidney Porter was a jazz musician back in the early 1900s sometime. I can't think of exactly the date at the moment. So it really just kind of depends again on what the person is researching, whether or not it's for personal use for the family history, whether or not it's trying to write a book. It's really interesting, actually, what folks will come to us as far as what they want to see.
Thank you. And Amanda, Jen W. is asking if there's a place for us to find the record retention timeframes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for asking that as well. I did create us a district retention schedule that goes over each department as far as what documents that you might be using within your department. Um, and then the appropriate retention rates that can be found on the district website. Under the records management tab, it is only available to PPS staff, so you will have to be signed into the website in order to view it. But if you go to the records management department tab, that should be, I think, the very last option to click on. If you have any questions in regards to the retention schedule, or you find that there's not something or something's not on there and you're wondering, okay, what is this record that I'm looking at? How long do I need to keep it? I'm not seeing that specific record on the retention schedule. And so what should I do with it? A lot of times we can lump documents in together. And so if you just have a specific question, let me know what your question is, what the document is, and then I can do a deeper dive into the retention schedule to let you know what's an adequate retention rate. So I tried to put as much information as possible on the retention schedule to make it a little bit easier. But a lot of these document types and a lot of the retention rates are a little bit ambiguous. So I would encourage you to reach out to me with your questions, especially as far as retention and whether or not it's something that's important that we need to keep and where we need to keep it. So I do often get those types of questions, which I absolutely welcome. I would rather somebody ask me 100 questions that they might think are silly questions than try to guess and then put the district into a non-compliant state. So, anyone has any questions relating to records, I very much encourage and welcome those questions. I mean, like I said, I would rather answer questions all day long than possibly get a little notice from the state that says, be careful, right? So, nobody wants to see that.
Thanks.
Any other questions that I can help with?
How about some of the fun, unusual things in the archive that you have?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Alicia. It's a great question. So, fun things we have in the archives. We do have a lot of pictures. We have pictures of the different sites as far as what they looked like prior to construction. In fact, the PEC used to sit on land that was occupied by a residential area. We do still have some of the pictures of those original houses that used to sit on this property. We have artwork that has been done throughout the years of the district being active, and sometimes they just not really know where to put the artwork. So we make sure that we keep that safe in the event that they ever want to display that somewhere at one of the schools or here at PEC at any time. We have a lot of trophies that are from across the district, different school sites, different years, different competitions. We have a lot of our yearbooks, not a whole lot of the middle school or elementary school yearbooks, mainly just the high school yearbooks, just because a lot of the stuff that we have here in our archives has been donated to us by community members, and that includes our yearbooks. So, we do have quite extensive years worth of the high school yearbooks. So if you're ever interested in looking up yourself or a friend in the yearbooks, you're welcome to come down and take a look. Um, trying to think of some other things we might have. Typically, what we will do for, especially for the artwork in general, is everybody knows that when we're doing site remodels, especially for the high schools, like we just finished Benson, and then the students will go over to Marshall while their home school is being remodeled or construction, whatever the case may be there. And a lot of times, what we'll do is we will hold all of their valuable trophies, artwork, plaques, anything that they don't want to kind of get lost by the wayside. We'll take that in, we'll store it in our vault that's down here on L2. And then when they're ready to move back into their beautiful new school, we send all that stuff back to them so that they can display it properly and proudly, as they should, as alumni have done those things in the past. And it's great to show where we've been and the successes that we have with our students over the years. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we did have a very famous alum come through Lincoln High School back in the early 1900s by the name of oh gosh, of course I'm blanking. Mel Blanc. And if you don't know who Mel Blanc is, he is the voice of all of the Looney Tunes. So we don't have a whole lot of info on Mr. Blanc just because he's, old, dead, and gone. But he was part of our district. And if you do go and let's say just Google Mel Blanc and you look at the Wikipedia page, it will show that Mel's teachers did not exactly appreciate his many voices, but he was able to continue taking those voices to Hollywood and made a big name for himself. So I understand the teachers were probably frustrated trying to get class done, but good for Mel for not getting distracted and continuing his talent there. Yeah, Sharon.
Okay, Nicholas S. has a question. He's asking, does the records department have any resources to assist other departments who have records needing digitization?
Yes and no. Um, we can definitely give feedback and help with facilitating those types of projects. Um, Obviously, since we have gone through and digitized the majority of our student records, we do still have some of our student records left in our archive. But we did in 2017, 2018, 2019. We took on a big project to go out to all of our physical schools, collect their cumulative files, bring them back here to PEC, and get those digitized into DocuWare. So we at least understand the process for digitizing and can help departments if they are ready to move forward with that. I'm absolutely a great resource to bounce ideas off of just because I've done this for the last 7 years. Um, and we also did help a little bit with the risk management department. They had some physical records they wanted help with. So I did sit down with that department and kind of just gathered a lot of information as far as what their needs were, how they wanted to view the records within DocuWare, basic things like that. But when it comes down to the budget piece, that would probably be something that we'd have to bring in the department heads, just because we got to talk about how we're going to adequately cover the costs for whether or not we're going to bring temporary employees in, or if we're going to go and talk to outside vendors to try and take care of this massive project. Because obviously each department has quite a bit of information on paper still in our warehouse. So we will continue to manage those documents. We will continue to keep an eye on all the retention. We will make them available should they ever be needed by any department to review. For instance, we have lots of HR records out in our warehouse, and occasionally they do need to view those records. So they send us a request. I need these boxes from these locations. We have the warehouse bring them to us. Someone from HR comes down, takes a look at information. When they're finished with it, we send it back out into the locations in the warehouse. So having things on paper can be a little bit more time consuming when we're talking about whether or not you need to look through something, find something. It's easier when things are in a digital world, just because, for instance, we use DocuWare for our student records. We can simply just put in a student ID, and then everything that the system has for that student will pop up very quickly, rather than walking to a physical filing cabinet or a box and trying to leaf through information to find what you're looking for. Digitally, it's so much faster to find something. So we do encourage the departments to have conversations with those that you might need to bring in regarding digitization. It definitely saves a lot of time once things are digitized, and it's just a lot easier for people to continue their daily work without having to waste all that time on physical files. I feel like there was something else I was going to say, and it's left me now. Yeah, it's left. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for the refresher.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Oh, I'm going to put the, for Pepper credit, it's just OTIS if they ask you for the keyword. And then the slides will be available in Pepper shortly. I think it takes a day or two to get posted.
And I totally meant to at least get to 45 minutes with my presentation here, but I seem to talk too fast, and
Never worry about the gift of time.
No problem. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
So I hope this was very informative, helpful information for you. Glad you're going to get a little time back in your day. Again, let me just stress and reiterate, please use records management as a tool and a reference anytime that you have any records questions, whether it be something about student records, HR records, facility records, retention, saving things here and there. Just we love to be the ones that you come to. We love to be helpful. We want to make sure that everything and everyone is not only remaining in compliance, but we also want to ensure that things are seamless and simpler for those of you in the district. This is our job. We do records, right? So let us do our job. Let us be the ones to help answer those questions for you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, I guess I can stop recording now.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Oops.